Good evening. And welcome to the Nottleman Auditorium. My name is Chris Gaines, and I'm the new superintendent here in Melville. Today is my 70th day in the district, and I'm pretty excited to be here. There's certainly some challenges that lay before us, but I think we've got some strong opportunities as we move ahead too. So I want to take a little time tonight and share some things with you. So I want to talk a little bit tonight, spend a little time letting you know a little bit about me. Going to spend quite a bit of time talking about some district information, share a little facts, some figures, some graphs, some charts. I want to talk for a pretty good bit about our strategic plan and how that's going to help drive us forward. Briefly talk about Proposition R, and then talk about some things that are kind of coming soon relative to some community engagement pieces and some things that we think will be helpful. At the end of the evening, I'll be available in the lobby to answer your questions and to visit. Also available to respond to questions will be our administrative team of principals, directors, cabinet, and if they'll stand right now, so come on guys and ladies, stand up. So all these great folks will be available to help answer questions as well. We also have a number of our school board members here tonight that I want to introduce, and they'll be available as well. So if they'll stand up, I'll try to see who I can see. We've got Jean Preto and Lisa Dorsey down here. I see Vicky Palaman and Larry Felton kind of here in the middle. And I see Jamie Murphy in the back. I know, I think at least one more member may be here a little bit later, had a work commitment that was going to go late. So, start about me. Well, I started out as a math teacher and a bus driver in a small district, a few hours down 55. Coached girls basketball for a little while too. Then I got the opportunity to move districts, and I taught science, coached golf, sponsored the Honor Society. I drove the bus a little bit, but not every day. And then I had the opportunity to be the high school principal in Bourbon. I had a great time doing that. Superintendent decided to retire, and the board promoted me, moved me up, and I became superintendent. I was fortunate to serve in Bourbon for 7 years. Then in 2008, I went to Wright City and served for 7 years as there as well. So this starts my 15th year as a superintendent, and I'm really honored to be serving as your superintendent here in Melville. Now, during that time, I've been really fortunate. When I was new, all the superintendents around me kind of took me under their wing to make sure I was doing things the way they should be done. They got me involved in some regional stuff and got me involved at the state level. And that led to me being elected by my peers in Missouri and then later in the Midwest to serve and represent them at a national level. And that's really afforded me the opportunity to be able to get to know some great folks around the country. And not only get to know them, but to get to know the things that are happening in their districts and the things that are really cutting edge and innovative that are happening across the country. So I've got friends that were pushing one-to-one a long time ago. I've got friends that are doing great work relative to personalized learning or proficiency-based learning or early college and high schools. So it's been a great resource for me. And here I was fortunate enough last February to serve on a panel with Dan Frazier from Minnesota and Candy Singh from California, and we were talking about the pitfalls of social media use in schools. So it's been a great experience. So that's kind of the professional side. On a more personal level, I'm Zach's dad. Zach is in the 5th grade at Hageman. Like a lot of kids, he likes Legos, and he's obsessed with Minecraft. Debbie and I celebrated our 20th anniversary earlier this year, and you can see that we kind of engage in a variety of outdoor activities and have some fun. You may also have heard that I particularly enjoy canoeing and kayaking. So I've been doing it for a long time, and then I've got a good friend of mine. We go every month. Several years ago, we kind of set that as a goal that we would paddle every month. And in the last 8.5 years, we've only missed a handful. Some of those were because we were sick, and some of those were because the ice was that thick. And the big ice chunks in the Missouri River can be a challenge sometimes. So that's enough about me. So let's talk about the district a little bit. So I really want to talk about the district in 2 areas. One is our enrollment and demographics and how that's been changing over time. And then I want to talk about our budget. I would have liked to have been able to share student achievement data with you. However, the test that the kids took last spring was a brand new test, and we can't compare it to the prior tests. And our annual performance report, which judges us at the state level, it won't be public for a few more months. So when that becomes public, we'll share that at a board meeting and get that information out. So enrollment-wise, this is what our enrollment looked like by grade level last fall. Kindergarten up through 12th grade. The line is our average enrollment per grade level. You may look at that and go, big classes in the high school and a big class in elementary. But overall, looks like enrollment is going to decline. That's what I thought when I looked at this. But then I dug a little deeper. And I looked at enrollment going back about 6 or 7 years. And what I could see is that as a group of kids move from kindergarten to 1st to 2nd up through 10th grade, pretty consistently, they'll gain kids every year. So that's a cohort survival method of looking at enrollment. And using that method, we should see pretty stable enrollment moving forward because we're going to gain those kids. Now, if we look at enrollment in a different lens, we can look at enrollment and the racial makeup of our student body. And we can see that over time, our white student population and our African American student population is declining. And we can see that our Asian and Hispanic student population is growing. And we can see that last year, for the first time, we reported students as multiracial. And we can see that number first appear. We can also look at enrollment, total enrollment over time, but then layer in this yellow line of what's happening with our free and reduced lunch count. And what's the percentage of our student body that qualifies for free and reduced lunch? And we can see that that's been growing. That growth represents about 780 kids during that time period. To give you a little context around that growth of 780 kids on free and reduced lunch is larger than 354 school districts in Missouri. This trend, though, we're not alone. We're seeing the same thing happening across the country. More and more students are growing up in poverty. If you were to look at this map on a time lapse, what you would see is poverty coming up from the south and getting higher and higher. You would also see that growth really happening along the Mississippi Valley. So that's kind of aggregate enrollment. But sometimes we can kind of get lost in that. So let's bring it down to the school level and see what's happening at the school level. So here we can see 5 of our elementaries. We can see what's happening with enrollment in the building. We can see what's happening with the free and reduced lunch count. And we've also added in the blue line what's happening with our English language learners, our ELL population. And the slopes of those lines, in some instances, kind of jump out at you. We can also look at the other 5 elementaries, see what's happening with them. We can look at the 4 middle schools to see what's happening, as well as our 2 high schools. So 16 schools, roughly 10,500 kids, making us one of the top 20 largest school districts in Missouri. All of those 10,500 kids live in our 40 square miles. They attend our 16 schools. They are all in the Melville School District. But you can see each building is pretty unique. And that uniqueness brings opportunities, and that uniqueness brings challenges. And from a district perspective, we've got to look at how we allocate resources. And are we going to allocate resources in an equal manner, or are we going to allocate resources in an equitable manner and serve the kids who need the resources most? So overall, relative to enrollment, we're getting more diverse. Our teachers, however, aren't. We've got to do a better job of recruiting minority teacher and principal candidates. We need the adults our kids see who are professional members of our staff to look like them. Poverty is increasing. That brings with it challenges. And our historical enrollment if we look at from a cohort methodology, should remain fairly stable. Last week, however, I met with a group of local realtors. When I hear from them, and I hear other anecdotal stories of people leaving the district or not wanting to buy homes in the district, there has to be a curiosity in the back of our minds of whether or not that stable enrollment growth will continue. So that's enrollment. Let's talk about budget. But before we do, or as we begin, trying to do too many things with my hands at once. Did you know that we're the largest restaurant in South County? During the school year, we're going to serve about 1 million meals, 5,700 a day, about. We're also the largest transportation provider in South County. We're going to bus about 8,000 kids, about 3,700 miles each and every day. We have 1.8 million square feet under roof. That's a lot to maintain. And we've got grounds around that we have to maintain. And oh yeah, we also educate 10,500 kids. We're a big operation with a lot of parts. So from a budget perspective, one of the questions, or one of the things that I heard as I was kind of transitioning in over to spring was, well, you're top heavy. Too many administrators, too many principals. So maybe you can tell I kind of look at data. So I took a look. What's our principal population looking like? Well, it's dropped 20% over this time period. We've been cutting principals. Well, you may say, well, I still think that's too many principals. So I dug deeper, and I found the district that is most close to us in enrollment in Missouri. They're 200 kids different. They have 2 high schools, just like we do. They have 10 elementaries, just like we do. They have 3 middle schools instead of 4. They have 10 more principals than we do. You can see then that their student-to-principal ratio is much lower than ours, affording their principals the opportunity to really be instructional leaders and work with their teachers on engaging students on a daily basis and having more support to deal with the management issues of the day. Now, our budget is big, a little over $100 million. It's got 2 main pieces, revenue and expenses. We kind of joke in the school budgeting world that when it comes budget time, everybody wants to give us input on the expense side, but when it comes time to budget the revenue, nobody shows up. So our revenue has been stagnant. So much so that if we had received the same kind of increases as Social Security benefits have in terms of cost of living, over the last 6 years, we would have collected an additional $51 million. That's if we would have kept up with Social Security benefit growth. We also know that local property tax revenue has not only been static, but it's been erratic. This is the percentage change from the prior year. You can see it's been down, it's been up, it's been down, it's been up, it's been down, it's kind of flat. It's really all over the board, and the result has been stagnation overall. You may have learned last year that we have, as a school district, the 2nd lowest tax rate in St. Louis County. And perhaps you may have noticed, property values have been declining. If we look at our assessed value this fall compared to 2008, we're down $226 million. In aggregate, that's how much your homes have lost value since 2008. That $226 million is larger than the assessed value of 234 Missouri school districts. It would wipe out their budgets completely. But we also get revenue from the state. We get that through the basic formula, and we have a formula that dates back to the mid-2000s. We have that new formula because the old formula was $1 billion underfunded, and a bunch of school districts sued. So the legislature came up with a new formula. And after about 4 or 5 years, it began to be underfunded too. So if the formula had been fully funded, we would have received millions in additional revenue from the state. We also get transportation funds from the state. Those funds suffered a significant loss, and since then they've been stagnant. Parents as Teachers, another state revenue piece, has taken a big hit, and that's a program that originated in Missouri and was taken nationwide. It was a model. But we spend money too, and our expense growth has been pretty small, really just kind of organic growth. We've seen increases in utility costs. You may have seen that in your home. There for a while we saw really tough diesel prices. We drive 3,700 miles a day. Buses don't get great fuel mileage. And we've also seen growth in healthcare costs. Part of that has been our loss ratio. Part of that has been the trend in health insurance across the country. And part of it has been the additional costs and fees within the Affordable Care Act. All of those have impacted us. All of those have driven us up on the expense side. And some people say, well, your people just make too much money. So, took a look. Our salary per student is one of the lowest in the county. Right there in the bottom with a lot of our other financial metrics. Which causes our expenses per kid to be second from the bottom as well. Overall, relative to budget, we've seen organic growth in expenses, and we've seen pretty stagnant revenue. The compounded impact of that over time has been a lot of cuts. In the last 10 or 11 years, we've cut 187 employees in a series of 4 cuts that we can find. But we've not only cut people, we cut building and supply budgets. In 2004-05, we spent about $1.4 million on textbooks and instructional support materials. We're going to spend about $300,000 this year. That part of our budget's been decimated. Facility needs delayed, budget's cut, technology cut, libraries zeroed out this year, clubs eliminated, charging fees. And if you live within a mile of the school district, we're going to charge your kid to ride the bus. That's a cumulative effect of what's been going on. So recently, Phi Delta Kappa and Gallup released their annual poll. It's their 47th. And they asked this question: what do you think is the biggest problem facing the schools in your community? The number one response nationally was lack of financial support. So if we look at that, lack of financial support, and we tag on the cuts that have been made over the last 10 or 11 years, the impact is really beginning to show. We're seeing a decline in student achievement. Our ranking relative to our peers in the state has been going down. We've got big class sizes. Kindergartens with 24, third grades with 27 to 29. We have a kindergarten class of 24 where the kids speak 9 different languages. I mentioned the textbooks. We've also seen a lack of teacher training. This past spring, we saw an exodus of staff. Our PTOs are going above and beyond. They've gone beyond just enriching and enhancing the educational experience of their kids to funding the operation of their building. We've got PTOs buying smart boards, and those wear out and have to be replaced. We have PTOs funding clubs, funding tutoring. We have significant facility needs. And without additional revenue, you may remember from last spring, more cuts are on the way. So sometimes I wonder if that's what busing is going to look like in our future. But I also forgot to mention that last year we had 121 kids that were on a waiting list for supplemental reading help because they were behind. So that's our reality. It's the reality we face. The state of the district is struggling. Financially, we're struggling, and it's beginning to have an impact on student achievement and what we're able to offer our kids. This is from the FDR Memorial. Maybe you can see this as this generation of Americans has a rendezvous with destiny. Some of you in this room were probably part of the generation that he was talking about. But I would say the current generation of Americans, the 10,500 kids that are in the Melville School District, also have a rendezvous with destiny. And I hope we don't shortchange them. That's our reality. We also have hope and a path forward, and that is our strategic plan. It was built last year through focus groups, surveys, adopted by the board, has three main parts to it. I'm going to spend a little time on those three parts. In terms of student preparation, we need specialists. We need interventionists. We need instructional coaches. We need teacher training so that our teachers can be the best they can be. We need to invest in technology. We need to reinvigorate our libraries as hubs of learning. Not the libraries that we went to school as, but a modern library where kids can come to get support for all aspects of the curriculum. In terms of teacher support, we need to restore those instructional supply budgets and those textbook budgets to where they were 10 years ago. And that doesn't even account for inflation over the last 10 years. And we need to invest in continuous classroom improvement training for our staff. When I look across the region and I see the districts that are really moving the needle on student achievement and really showing gains, the common element, all of them are using some sort or some element of continuous classroom improvement. That Gallup poll, they asked, what can we do to improve our local schools? The number one answer was improve the quality of teachers. So I mentioned earlier I'm Zach's dad, and he was in 5th grade at Hegeman. So that makes me a parent in the district. As a parent in the district, I need Zach's teachers to have the best skills and the latest knowledge so that he can have the foundation to pursue his aspirations, whatever they are. I think you want the same thing for your student. I think you want the same thing maybe for your grandkids. In terms of effective and efficient, and becoming an effective and efficient system, we've got a lot of pieces here. The biggest piece is really the facility piece. We have some significant facility needs. We've got a lot of small ones too, but we've got some big ones. We've been doing budget forecasting. We've got to move away from just doing forecasting and having a budget plan. To do so, we've got to have some information and some decisions have to be made. But we can get there. We need to put together a scorecard to show you how we're doing relative to this strategic plan. This has been an internal priority in our office. We found the software to do that. Actually, Dr. Lane had a webinar today where he learned a little bit more. But we still have significant training and data entry before we can really engage around that. And last year, a number of surveys were conducted to really understand the voice of the community, the voice of our customer. We've got to continue to do that, and we've got to build a communication plan so that we're regularly engaging in two-way communication with our community. So if you've been adding up, all of that adds up to about $14.5 million. It would take 85 cents in additional levy to fund it. Or we could just ask the state for more money, and I'm sure they'll come through. So we've placed, the Board of Education has placed before you Proposition R. It's a 49-cent increase to our operating levy to fund some, but not all of our strategic plan. We realized that 85 cents is a reach, so we looked at what we could prioritize within the strategic plan. So I want to briefly share that with you. In terms of student preparation, I said we'd like some interventionists and coaches. But from a priority standpoint, we'd like 16 of them. We'd really like to invest in training our teachers and principals to improve their skill set and make them the best they can be. And we would restore some of the cuts that were made last spring. In terms of teacher support, we want to fund the 2 items that I mentioned, getting that textbook and instructional support materials back to where they used to be, and continuous classroom improvement training. In terms of effective and efficient, we need to gather that feedback to see where that's going to be. Understand the voice of our community, understand the voice of our customers. So I mentioned earlier, we have the second lowest tax rate in St. Louis County. If Proposition R passed, we would still have the second lowest tax rate in St. Louis County. So Proposition R, in a nutshell, asks for 49 cents. If you own a $150,000 home, that translates to about 38 cents a day. You're going to decide our path forward on November 3rd, you and a bunch of others. So what's coming? What's coming? There's an app for that. So late last spring, the district started work with a partner on developing a district app. That's going to be out sometime this fall. So you'll be able to see attendance and discipline, I'm sure, and lunch and all those kinds of things. Lots of district information that will be on the app. We have also launched an Ask the District button on our website. That went up today. We got a question today. So send us a question, give us a little while, we'll respond. Those questions and responses will be on our website. And I mentioned that dashboard for our strategic plan. So, the first board meeting I ever attended after being named superintendent, Dr. Ritter said to the audience and the board that this was a dysfunctional system. Well, I agree and disagree. We certainly have some areas of dysfunction, but we have some areas that function very well. And we also have some areas where there's no real system at all. And I'm afraid that in some cases, that dysfunction and that lack of system is our comfort zone. That's where it's easy for us. And as long as we stay there, we're not going to get to where the magic happens. As a system, we've got to become less concerned about how things look and more concerned about what will move the system forward and what will move our kids forward. We've got a strategic plan that will guide us. we got to stick with it. We got to stop making random decisions. That started a little bit last year. The district's journey towards continuous improvement started when the district started using better data to make some decisions. The next step in that is to use better data than we used last year to make better decisions than we did last year. That's how continuous improvement works. We've got to get to where the magic happens. And to do that, we have to change. Change is hard. It takes guts. It takes imagination. But most of all, it takes commitment. The commitment to change and the commitment to operate as a system in order to get to where the magic happens. I think we can do it. I know we have to do it. It's something we have to do. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules and come out and listen to a guy stand on a stage and talk for a little more than he planned to. The administrators, the board, our cabinet will be out in the lobby. I'll be out in the lobby. So come by, visit with us, ask questions. Thank you for coming out tonight. Just give us a little time to get out there.